make sure that Justin can be heard and can hear us first?
Well, he's live, so.
Oh, okay.
I don't feel like he can.
No, he can hear us.
Can you speak?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay,
I
I can hear you.
though.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Good news.
But it's very low, though.
You're a little low, yes.
But I think I can edit it on my side.
Just give me a second. Coming in kind of hot. Settings.
I mean, it was nice of Kelsey to give you a little bit of time just to get acclimated before she hit the go live button.
It's okay. It's like part of the authenticity. Others are just like me. Like, you guys aren't, like celebrities are just like us.
Kelsey, nobody is just like you.
Oh, well, clearly you are tonight. And so was Bobby because his headset wasn't working. So
No, it wasn't my headset.
I was
Okay.
the only one who
I was
came
sitting in the
prepared.
wrong room. I grabbed the wrong link. I was like, eventually I noticed. I'm like, oh, this says born, not.
Are you back in the board?
Yeah.
Just hanging out in the
I was
board.
like-
I was sitting in there for like 15 minutes. I'm like, man, everybody's late.
I like literally talk shit about you. I was like, not Mr. What time do we start? Not here yet.
Yes, well, some of us have children.
No,
That
but
don't
you were
conform
actually
to
you were
schedules.
earlier than Bobby and I.
Yeah.
Well,
You were just in the wrong room. But welcome everybody to this authentic, wonderful live show for the Mountain is. Look at us all having the same cover. Okay.
Uh-huh. The good cover.
Wow.
cover.
This is the best cover.
Yes.
The cover that is like featured whenever you look it up on Goodreads and everything else. They really had a glow up for the
They were like
for the
we need-
paperback.
They were like, maybe people like octopuses.
Yeah.
Should they though? That's the real question.
That's what this book dares to ask you. Should you
Wow.
like octopuses?
Wow, that was philosophical.
Justin, I thought you didn't think about those things when you read.
No,
when you
I
read
definitely
books.
didn't. I don't definitely have a quote from Goodreads of all the best quotes of this book, so I can follow along with you guys.
He came prepared.
Yeah,
Well, he finished this book, I don't know, 2 months ago.
Yeah,
so-
you were
month ago.
early. You were very excited for this.
it was my pick.
It was your pick.
So why don't you summarize it for us?
no.
Names and all.
Oh, I
Get every
summarized-
single name right of every single person at every single location and every single country that is created in this near future.
What if octopi,
I looked it up. You could say both.
had thinking ability, and there's also a robot?
Wow.
That's the gist of the book.
Wow.
Bobby, actually give a real synopsis of this book because I gave a synopsis
Just
of
you
the last
stole
one.
my joke. I was gonna be like, okay. Anyways, Bobby.
So the story of The Mountain and the Sea is about really a set of 3 stories intertwined. The main story, though, follows a doctor named Ha Win, who is she a marine biologist? I can't remember what her exact title is, but she is sent to this remote island that is a nature preserve called Kandao to research this, what they call the Kandao sea monster, which people are reporting of an octopus that seems to be extremely smart and extremely also at times hostile. And she's brought to this island by this corporation called, is it Dianima? Dianima, to study this along with an AI named Evrim, and another person who is the defense of the island, and they're just tasked with researching it. We don't really. The book does its best to hide a lot of the motivations of people outside of our main characters, but the other 2 stories deal with someone who is being tasked from the outside trying to hack into something, and the other is about a man who has been turned into a slave on a fishing boat. And those 3 stories intersect by the end in ways. So that's really about. I found it to be even though there's a lot of stuff that happens in the book, oddly not a very plot forward book, even though it had a lot of plot. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Oh, it makes a
No,
lot of
I
sense.
understand you completely.
Yeah, it didn't feel like the plot was the point, even though there was a lot of plot. So, yeah. So I mean, we'll get into that obviously as we talk about our feelings on it. But that's what I took away from it.
Now, I had an interesting journey with how I feel about this book, but I would like for you guys to give your ratings first, and a little reason as to why, so we can start a discussion.
Are you going to call on one of us, Professor?
Bobby.
Okay. I gave it 3 stars. I would say this. I liked the book. I enjoyed reading it, and I especially enjoyed when we were dealing with the marine life aspects of the book and their relationship to the human race. I thought all that stuff was really interesting, and I think that Ray Naylor does a really great job with descriptive language and really making me feel like I understood and saw the things that he was describing. But it gets doctriny because like I mentioned earlier in my plot synopsis, I don't feel like the 2 other stories are particularly interesting on their own. And I also don't feel like he nailed the landing with intersecting them by the end and really making them feel like they really made sense when they all came together. And I think there's a couple of plot things that I just don't really like, and a couple of character decisions and a couple of reveals that I feel like come out of nowhere. And I also feel like it was a thriller that didn't have much tension. It was the other part of the with Doctor of those 2 stars taken out. So that's my feelings, my brief feelings on it.
Justin?
I also gave it 3 stars. I could agree with Bobby about the vast majority of what he said about this book. Out of the 3 stories that were being told, I felt one of them was, it felt worthwhile. The other one was just like, okay, I don't really know what's happening here because, as usual, the obvious escapes me. And the third story I felt like was just a giant waste of time and felt like it needed to be put in there for, I guess, flavor. A lot happens in this book for absolutely nothing to happen. And that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It felt like whenever we were talking about what was happening on the island and dealing with the octopus, I was feverishly engaged with the book. And that goes kind of nowhere. There are moments when it seems like this is really going places, and it kind of just spins its wheels in place for the story not to really move very far from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. That said, I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed characters in this book. I'm just not sure I enjoyed it as a whole as much as I was hoping to, since this was my pick. And that's the way I felt about it.
So I went through, I think, a similar journey over time. So I give this 4 stars because I think upon the read, I was very engaged with Dr. Nguyen's story with the octopus, and I forgot the Evan, the AI's Evrim, yeah, the AI story, that whole aspect, and I am a sucker for octopuses. I find them very fascinating, and I think Naylor really pulled me in because in his acknowledgments he was discussing like anthropology, which is my degree, something I studied for a very long time. So one of the books that he credits is How Forests Think, and that was a really interesting book that I read as a part of my degree, discussing obviously like what would happen if like trees would run the world and humans weren't around and stuff like that. And I think that when I started to think about that book in comparison with this book, I was like, oh, it makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see the similarities. I think I was really pulled in by the idea of the book. But now that I think back to it a couple of weeks later, I don't really think about anything else in the book besides Dr. Nguyen's story. I could definitely see what Naylor was trying to do with, I think it was Aiko's story about him being on the ship. And we could get into that. I definitely think there's a discussion there about slavery and being a human or not being a human. I think that is kind of what he was getting at there. But I definitely think that there are missteps in the book that upon reflection, I'm like, oh, I don't even like, I barely remember things. Besides like how I felt about Dr. Nguyen and literally reading the beginnings of the chapters about a book that wasn't even a book. I would rather read that book. I think that book's fascinating.
Yeah, I would read that book. Her book about how oceans think.
I would read her follow-up after she discovered this.
Yeah.
So we can get into, I guess, her story and where you guys thought the story was going in regards to the octopus. And what did you think the overall plot was going to be in that sense? Did it live up to expectations?
I felt like it kind of fell short of my expectations.
Okay.
Like I was left wanting a lot more from that story. It felt like the story ended as it was just really starting to begin. It asks a lot of questions. This book asks a lot of questions.
Yes.
And doesn't give a lot of answers. So I'm left wondering, what about these sentient octopuses? Like, what's the deal? How did they come about? What's the next part of this story? And the book kind of just stops. Like right as things really start to, hit their apex, and you discover that these octopuses can kill people.
Yeah. That they have like an elite Navy SEAL Team 6 group of octopuses that can invade strongholds.
With them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the actual story of this culture of octopi and how they came about. Like, I was fascinated by it. I just wanted more from it. Like, I wanted to see where this story went. And we don't get that.
Yeah, I as covered last time in our Bourne discussion, I don't have problems, right, when a book is asking a bunch of questions that it's not going to give you definitive answers to. My main problem, though, is that I felt like our main character, she goes through sort of like a personal journey, right, where she sort of realizes things about herself through her study of the octopi, which is great. I want that in my book, from my main characters. But I felt like she didn't really... For the things that she believed about at the beginning of the book about the octopi, it's not like she didn't learn anything new. It was just like it confirmed what she already thought about them. And we only got to the point where she was like, okay, all the stuff I thought about them is right. I was right about this. And then, like just the book kind of stops, right? And I kind of wish that had been more of the midway point of the book, so that we'd have gotten more about what was happening with these creatures and their society. And I think that I don't want to call the other stories a complete waste, but I do think like both of them sort of, when they end, they don't really give us anything more than we're getting from the characters on the island. And I mean that both from a narrative perspective and from like a asking questions, what does it mean to be a human? All these kind of bigger questions. I think Naylor is trying to use them almost to give either emphasize or give like, oh, here's another way I'm trying to show you how in our society we're much like the octopi, or much like how we deal with the octopi. The people above us treat us this way, that kind of thing. But I got all of that from just the story on the island. I didn't need the other two stories. And every time the book would go like, we're going over to Rustrum or whatever, I'm like, okay, like can we just go back to the island? Because that's what I want to hear about. I loved, Dr. Nguyen. I loved the AI. I thought the description of the AI, the questions it was raising, all of that kind of stuff, I thought was really good. It just was the other stuff. And I agree with Justin. I feel like the story ended before it was supposed to for me.
I think like what we're kind of all like feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Naylor was doing too much in the book, because it was at once nonfiction, at once a philosophical text on what it is to be human with 3 separate characters and situations. And then also a mystery with Rustrum and a sci-fi twist at the end of the book that I was like, the hell is happening? And then it was also a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there was so many things happening in this book that I think all of them, like you said, Bobby, could have been done in literally one story.
Yeah.
Because the sort of discussion on slavery and whatnot happens with the I forgot this character's name, but the security robot human that they have.
Atlantseg, I think
Yes.
is how
Yeah.
you said her name. Yeah.
So there's that, right? She's there. She has one goal. That there's no other like goals in life or tasks. I could not, I'll be honest, understand whether or not they were human because I thought Nivram was the only AI.
They were human. They were human. They were just trained to interface with like these machines was really what it was.
Okay, I think you probably grasped it easier when reading because in the audiobook, the way that her voice starts in the beginning is robotic and she sounds like a robot. And then once Doctor hold on, I'll get it. Of course, every chapter I'm going to, it's just Nguyen. Oh my gosh. What was it? Bob? Help me.
You're talking about Dr. Chan? You're talking about Dr. Chan right now?
Yes, okay, but the full name.
I can't say the full name. You're the one who can say the full name.
Minervu Dr. Chan.
Yes.
When she comes back to the island, the security lady puts back on the robot voice, but when it's just her and Nguyen, she has a British accent in the audiobook. And there is a line in the book where she says like, I can speak like normal. I find people are more respectful of me when I speak like a robot. So there's that whole discussion that's, I think, probably more elevated in the audiobook because you really are hearing this duality of intended voice.
It's she wears a translator. She wears a machine that translates her voice because
Exactly.
she doesn't, because they speak different languages. So yeah.
And she could turn it off and she sounds.
Well, they say she has a bad translator that she uses on purpose, like an old bad translator that she uses on purpose because she doesn't want to deal with people. And then when she actually likes you, she puts on like the good translator and it sounds like a real person.
So that's what it is. So in the audiobook, the first one sounds like a robot.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
I think whether this was intended or not, I think that kind of duality is there for a reason to kind
for
of,
sure,
like, isolate our security character.
Yeah.
I think like a lot could have been done on the island itself. I don't think we needed, I think instead of having this like nonfiction, like Naylor's testing his skills to talk about oceans, while I enjoyed those parts and I wish we read those parts, I think those parts could have been intersected with like news articles of this horrific being, Loch Ness monster thing that's killing everybody on the islands.
Mm-hmm.
And then that could have added that aspect where we're like having this kind of sinister idea of the octopus without needing an entire narrative just on that. And I think it could have probably been a lot more effective and shaved off a couple of 100 pages. And I think it would have worked more effectively.
Yeah, it definitely is like 75 pages too long.
Yeah.
I think. And even like that stuff, I love that ocean stuff and the book stuff. They could have incorporated that into just her discussions, right, with Evram and with the other people. So it didn't, and that would have got around my other problem, which I mentioned earlier, which is I felt like she already knew everything that she needed to know, and that it wasn't like she was really learning anything, researching, that she was confirming beliefs, but not learning anything. And so that was the thing that I think fell short for me.
I definitely think she could have had the discussions that she was like, you know, when she's like, octopuses are so beautiful and like they could really be like us. Like, I feel like that whole aspect of this nonfiction, like beginner chapter parts, could have just been her journey throughout this book. Like, she could have been a well-respected marine biologist on her own. She didn't need to already be fascinated with octopuses. I feel like if you are a marine I feel like I'm a normal person, love octopuses. I just feel like if you're a marine biologist and you know about Octopolis and these societies that are actually real in the oceans currently, it's already fascinating. So it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination. Like, she doesn't have to be obsessed with octopuses to come.
Yeah.
Like, I think he could have found a better explanation for bringing her, like some other reason. But I just feel like while I really enjoyed those chapter starters, I think it just would have given her more of a growth throughout the book. And then it would have made more sense interjecting with like news articles if you still wanted to add this like aspect of like starting a chapter with like thoughts.
Or she's writing a diary or something, or she's writing the book as she's discovering this stuff on the island. That's the kind of stuff I felt I was a little like removed from in it.
So when did you guys figure out that her boyfriend wasn't real?
Literally when it said it.
Oh, really?
literally when it said it. I was shook. I couldn't believe it. I like it's, you know, it's because it was like when they start saying like, she's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah. And like, how's your thing? And she's like, oh my God. And then as she's realizing it, I felt the dread. I was like, no.
I mean, Kelsey, they literally spell it out. They spell it out for even I saw it coming.
Yeah. Once it was introduced, that the concept of that thing was introduced in the restroom chapter where he's with that woman
connection right away.
Immediately. Because the way it's described, the way you see that like companion is the exact same way they describe it when you first see it with Dr. Wynn at the beginning. And other times she sort of interacts with the person, like any time of the night, and also like the way the background is, all this kind of, it was all the exact same language between the two.
Also, there was an aspect of her personality where it was like, these are meant for these type of people who struggle with making relationships. And like, you could tell this woman's relationship was with the ocean. And that she was going to struggle with making...
I just believed in love, I guess. Sorry.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with loving the ocean. It's not going to ask you how your day was.
Yeah. She seemed too lonely in the way she was talking about herself for her to have a partner like that.
No, like,
also,
yes, it all clicked.
Like all sorts of times of the night, like, I'm going to the, like, it was just the way that it was like structured out. I'm like, oh, there's something going on here. And that was before they even got into the whole, like, what was the name of that movie? I don't know. With Scarlett Johansson? Her,
yeah.
Oh, her, yeah.
There was her aspect to everything there.
Yeah, for sure.
Gosh. Wow. No, like, literally, it was when he was like, huh? And like, he wasn't understanding. That was when I was like, he's been fake the whole time.
It's not real.
Maybe that's why I gave it like a 4 stars right away. I was like, bro.
It just blew my mind. Who could have seen this coming? What did we think before we dive into like the other storylines? Because I do want to talk about them, even though we weren't really high on them. They made a lot of hay out of this one thing where, you know, kind of Evram.
Can I just interrupt? Can I show you when I figured it out?
It's so late in the book, Kelsey.
Because like the last page of the book, Kelsey's like, wait, it wasn't real? Wait, okay, I'm worried about her boyfriend.
Yeah, what happened to her?
Smashed in the bathroom. What's going on?
To her boyfriend. She's got to make up with him. There's the point where they make a big deal, right? Out of, she has like some disagreement with Evram, and then, you know, she's not going to leave, but there's a thing where like all of a sudden, like, you know, the security person is like, you can't leave even if you want to. I'm supposed to kill you if you don't.
Oh yeah.
And but same thing with Evram, right? And they made this big deal about it, and she was like, "Oh my, I can't," you know, whatever. And she got like, I was like, I guess for me reading it, I was like, I don't understand why this was revealed in this way, because she wasn't going to leave. It wasn't like she was like, I want the next boat out of here. Like, this is the problem with the book, is that it tries to be a thriller, but it's not good at setting up these sort of thriller staples, right? Even though it has a real, like, the fact that the octopus family is like the real danger is like cool. It's like very different, and it sets you sort of like ill at ease, but it does not do a good job of setting that stuff up and like kind of metering it out. But also that whole reveal and the fact that she was so angry about it I just
Yeah, like what were you expecting?
yeah. I
You
don't
think you could discover sentient species here on
yeah.
planet Earth and be like, cool.
Yeah.
This was a great vacay. Thanks, guys.
This company made everybody leave this island. Nobody's supposed to know about it. They kill anybody who tries to even get close. They don't care. They don't care if your boat's a slave boat. If your boat gets close, you're getting blown up. It doesn't matter. And you think you're just sort of like gonna be able to come and go as you please?
You know, me and her thought her boyfriend was real, so
That's
give us a break.
She didn't think her boyfriend was real. You were the only one who thought her boyfriend was real.
You're telling me she knew the whole time?
Yes, Kelsey.
No, okay, no, we have to go back to this plot point.
The whole point is that in that earlier the scene with Rustrum and the woman, she talks about like what they are and that you buy one and it gets programmed for you and that like
she knows, but she kind of doesn't want to know.
Exactly. She plays along with it because she wants to feel like she has a relationship.
It works. It works for her to a certain point, but at the point where it doesn't work anymore is when she realizes like I can't have this.
Yeah. This isn't enough for me. I need someone who can actually has their own desires and wants, basically.
What did Kelsey?
You think
Kelsey, it's not a Kelsey.
Consciously the whole time.
It's not a think. Yes, she knew the whole time. It's not a think.
Thought it.
Yeah. If you go, yes, if you go back and listen to that, go back and read that chapter with that poor woman who sleeps with Rustrum and then gets killed.
Yeah. I remember all of this.
She explains the process of getting one of those things.
Okay, I thought, so here's where I was I thought that to keep her on the island, Dr. Minovadotir-chan like
You're just showing off now.
Is the one that orchestrated her being able to speak to her boyfriend. And so I thought that she was the one that did this the whole time to like encourage her to come to the island because she is this lonely person and then keep up this facade of speaking to someone. And like, I literally thought that she figured it out in that moment. I was like, whoa, what a revelation.
No, what she's doing is
I wasn't picking up what Ray Naylor was putting down. I took it face value.
Is at a point, I think, with that point of that whole section is that she has realized that these falsities, these things that she has sort of like kept in her life to sort of make her feel comfortable, to allow her not to, this whole theme, right, of caring about like giving a shit about your place in the world, about other people, about things, you know, she was comfortable for most of her life not caring, keeping because of what happened to her when she was a kid, not caring about relationships, but still needing this sort of like person to talk to. And then she gets to the point where she's just like, I can't deal with the falsities anymore. And that's why she pushes it. Why she pushes it, because she has to push it far enough for herself where she can no longer even keep up like the sort of like trick that she's playing on herself. I think most of the time.
I don't remember the question that she asked him or asked it.
Yeah.
That he couldn't figure out. He's like, what do you mean? And like whatever I forget what it was, but that broke the cycle for her.
Yeah.
Being able to come back to this thing and the comfort of it.
Yeah. And I thought, again, this is what I think her stuff is the strongest stuff in the whole book, because I think he does do a good job of setting up this thing that happened to her when she was a kid and how her whole life has been this certain way. And she has come using what she's learning now or what she's seeing now as a way to sort of break through those things that she'd always been hung up about, because she's seeing them in other beings and other people. I thought all that stuff worked pretty well on the character perspective. It was just the plot stuff more that I thought didn't work very well.
Do you know, you had mentioned before that this book feels like it's 100 pages too long or 75 pages too long. I would argue this book feels like it's 200 pages too short, because while we're going to talk about these other stories, the ending of this book is rapid fire and comes out of absolutely nowhere.
I agree with you, but I think that's because there's wasted pages. I think there's wasted pages. Yeah.
I think we all three of us want the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's like me and Bobby like cut out all this useless shit. And then like whether give or take, it would give us the same thing. Like if you cut out the parts that aren't really like
relevant
important.
or important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, like you're like, yeah, like let's evolve all the stories. But in reality, like either or way would work because
Mhm.
it's just the problem is the lack of development. So
Yeah.
if he's going to introduce all these stories, then yes, an extra 200 pages is warranted because the story ends where Aiko is on the island and he's like, is this where the octopus was? And then he meets the Tibetan monk that we barely talk about.
Mhm.
And or we just cut that. Why does he need to come to the island? Why is he the only lone survivor? Why?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of questions that I think Ray Naylor is trying to ask with these stories, but are ultimately pointless
Mhm.
in regards to the overall story, because these questions can be answered just literally with the octopus alone.
So
Mm.
with the other two stories, one involving somebody who's become a slave on a slaver ship,
Mhm.
and the other involving a very famous hacker. I think
You guys need to
aside
explain
from
the hacker story to me. I'll be
okay,
honest, I really did not understand.
okay, so aside from any philosophical questions that these
Mhm.
stories
Yeah,
might
yeah.
ask, I think what he's trying to do is show you what the outside world is like in whatever time period this is. We haven't even set that up. We are in some near future. They don't exactly say when.
Immediate
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say we are somewhere between 25 and 30 years into the future.
There's definitely like it's not exactly like it's definitely like a Blade Runner type of vibe going on here because it's like it's kind of what we know, but it's like it's also not. There are countries that have been merged together and countries that have disappeared, and like there's a whole country that's the Ho Chi Minh autonomous zone,
Yeah,
and
an alternate present.
yeah, like so it definitely has some of those things where, and I was honestly a lot of the time mostly annoyed by those things because he spends again, one of these things, he wants it to be part geopolitical thriller, corporate thriller, and it just it those things don't work. And if you would just set this in, kept all the country names the same and just but we have AI or whatever, it would have been just as effective as whatever he did in those places. But sorry, go ahead, Justin.
I think that the hacker storyline, which we could get into, we could talk about with Kelsey,
Yeah.
is good. Like as far as like if you wanted to put a second narrative in this book where it's like, okay, we have conflicting things and these two are going to crash head on. I did not realize at first, and when I mean at first, to the very end, that the hacker was trying to hack into Evrim. I was like, what is this person trying to hack?
Literally same.
Like,
I didn't realize it until very close to the end.
Yeah.
Very close to the end.
Of course, once you find out, you're like, oh, fucking duh. Of course.
Yeah.
The whole slaver aspect, it's an interesting story, but it doesn't really mesh well. Like you could take that entire part of the book out, and I don't think the book would lose anything for it.
Mm-mm.
I would argue against you, but probably for similar reasons. Like I think and it's also because, like, believe me when I say I did not understand the hacker story at all. I was like, what is the point? Why do they even care about being in Nevrim, right?
Mhm.
Like Evrim, sorry. What is the purpose of being in it besides it being like a cool aspect to the hacker sci-fi story? Because the AI controlling a slaver ship is a turning of this trope on its head, right? This fear of AI and this fear of AI being too human is now controlling people that humans themselves have put as non-humans, right? And this AI seems scary, technically is only doing its job.
Yeah,
It
doing its
technically
program
is
to do.
still exactly. It technically is still a computer because it's still behaving in a way that, like, the AI ship is basically a horror Blade Runner-y type of trope, all encompassing, being controlled by humans. The scary part is not the AI ship. It actually is the fact that whether you are a human or an AI, you are still not a human in the eyes of other humans in this capitalist society that we unfortunately live in.
Exactly, yeah.
And the hacking of Nevrim's story, like, I would actually like to know why it was important, because I really, like, besides the fact that I was like, are they suggesting all humans are connected and we can enter each other's minds? That was where my mind was going. Granted, I was listening to this book at 3 times speed, so please.
And stoned out of your mind, apparently.
Apparently.
Oh.
Jeez, Kelsey.
And so, like, bear in
This
mind
is why
that
we just
maybe
pay
I
attention
missed
to the plot and we don't
maybe I
look too
missed the
deep into things.
nuances. So I would like to know, like, why you guys feel like the hacker in Evram's brain is more reflective of the theme of the book.
So here's the thing. I don't think I'm going to jump in front of you, Bobby.
Yeah, go.
I don't think that it's the theme that makes it good. It's you have two. If you realize, which I think most people probably would have, that there's a hacker, there's an AI, somebody is trying to hack into the AI. You have two conflicting sides that are on a collision course. You're getting to read the good guy story and you're getting to see the bad guy story. And you're like, when does the bad thing happen? It's a sense of dread building up in the book. Like, this guy's really good. He's going to find his way into the AI's brain. I almost think it would have been better for us to find out, like, for him to just lay it out in front of you, like, we want you to hack into this AI. And that way, as you're reading it,
so helpful for me.
As you're reading it, you're like, oh my God, I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to happen. As we find out, by the time you get to the end of that particular story, that's at the beginning of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that entire story is done before Dr. Ha gets to the island. It's as she's getting to the island. That story ends.
Yeah.
I thought that was a neat little twist.
That is a neat twist, for sure, yes.
Some shows have done that in the past.
Yeah.
Some shows that I've watched in the recent past, where it's like one story ends as the show is beginning. And that's like kind of neat. But for me, I thought like that's why that story would work, is because you have two competing sides happening at the same time and you're jumping back and forth between perspectives. That, from a plot or a plot device, is why I think it works.
Yeah. I say I'd agree with Justin. I think, Kelsey, the Slaver story is much more on theme, right, for what the rest of the story is about. Whereas the whole book is trying to tell you and the questions it's trying to raise. I feel like the hacker story was more engaging in a plot sense, because I think it was, at least it had things to keep you going as far as like, what is this person doing? But, and I agree with you, Justin, I think the mystery that they put in front of it, I think definitely hurts it. Yeah. Because, you know, we've got, the other thing we haven't really talked about is we have these little vignettes that happen, right? Where this person with this electronic mask asks people their stories from Kandao and then kills them. Like, it's getting rid of them. So there's nobody who knows about the sea monster except for whoever's on the island and this person and this, whoever this person works for, which they mentioned some liberation front or something, like when that person you think is Rustrum is on the boat with the cop and then the boat ends up getting destroyed by the other boat. Or what have you? You know what scene I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what scene you're talking about.
You don't know what okay, so
I really feel like this whole aspect of the story, I was like, okay, anyways.
Yeah, so I think the problem, right? Here's the problem. When you're trying to do, we're talking about a thematic book mixed with a thriller, which is a completely plot-centric, genre to be working in, you've got to be very clear about your plotting, right? And I think we never really know who this person is who's killing all these people, who they work for, why they're doing it. We sort of get the vague sense that they're trying to take over the corporation, but we don't have any reason to care that they're trying to take over the corporation. The corporation seems like they are terrible. Like they seem like they're bad. We don't have any reason to care that they're trying to take over the corporation, except for what we're assuming is the human cost, which is the people that we know on the island, right? But there's no sense from the Rustrum storyline of, if he is able to hack in to Evram, like, so he kills the two other people on the island, and then these people get to come and
wait.
Also study the octopus. Like, I don't understand. This is what I'm saying. It's very murky about what the whole point is.
I think. Well, hang on. Let's rewind for 1 second, because we mentioned somebody dying on a boat. So at some point in the story, there's a cop that's talking to a hacker that you assume is Rustum.
Yes.
And it's not. It's a hacker. It's another hacker who was unable to complete the job.
Yes.
And he's talking to the police about it.
Yeah.
Because the police, for some reason, know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And he's like, I couldn't do it, but this other guy could. And you find out that other guy is Rustum.
Yeah.
And the Liberation Front, basically an analogy for me of what is the bunch of losers in America who carry around the torches? Not
What?
the Proud Boys, but like the people who tried to storm the Capitol. Like they're afraid of change.
Yeah. They're Proud Boys. I mean, they're right-wing
they're
extremists or whatever. Yeah.
I can't remember the other name that they would use for them. They have a name that they want to use. The Freedom, whatever. I can't remember. They're not worth remembering. Anyway, these people crash into the boat and they kill that hacker because they don't want the news getting out. For me, what they were trying to do is they were trying to hack into Evram because he is an affront to humanity. He's an AI, and that's disgusting. And so for the way that I read the story was like, they want somebody to hack in there and just take control of it and probably do something bad with it so that this never happens again.
Yeah, well, because they're trying to take down this corporation by, and I assume if that robot, I'm assuming they use a robot to kill the people on the island and then be like, see, look how terrible this corporation is, and then they can swoop in and take over, right? They're like the Swan Club or whatever the hell. I don't remember where the cops said where they're from, but that scene I think is intentionally misleading, right? Because you have the scene prior where Rustrum is at the police precinct, where he ends up at the talking to that cop, and then so you get this other scene with this other hacker talking to the cop. And again, so I'm talking about, it's murky. It doesn't, and I think it's intentionally supposed to make you think it's Rustrum. I think Naylor is doing that on purpose.
He is.
And then that person dies, and you get another chapter, because I was like, oh, Rustrum's dead. And then we get another chapter with him later on.
I don't remember any of this.
You don't remember the scene? So the cop and this guy meet on a boat, and then he tells him what's going on. He says he's gonna, like, the cop says, he's gonna get him out of there. And then they go up on the top of the deck, and there's like a giant, like, basically like a, like a cargo ship, like that destroys their boat in like half the harbor or whatever. Because they say, like, the cop thinks to himself, report happens, like, how many people are they going to kill just to cover up this one thing or what have you?
I feel like, I know we all have the same edition, but I feel like
it's definitely in here. I promise you, it's in here.
I think it was
They
just
talk
because
about-
I didn't care. I think like I just didn't care about these parts, and I was like, I really don't care about this hacker. And like, I don't think things were clicking up here, because of course the hacker would want to hack into the only AI that's in this book. and like that this AI is constantly talking about how they, like, people don't like me, and like they're scared of me, and like Dr. Minerva Daughter Chan like created me, but like she doesn't actually enjoy my time either, but I know her so well, and then you're like, oh, okay, relax.
Yeah.
So like I think, like, and I don't even think, guys, I realized that the end of the book was the beginning.
I mean, the end of Rustrum's story
now-
was the
but
beginning
now
of the
it-
book.
story is
Yeah,
the
I know,
beginning
but
of the
now
book.
Yeah.
I know, but now that you guys are saying that, I was like, that's why everyone was like, I need to go walk at the end, and it's like anyways, whatever. I don't think like
Kelsey, I think you
nothing
might
was
need to
clicking.
reread this book.
Nothing was clicking. No, I just think this book was. I just think that there was too much in this book to be able to cohesively understand and appreciate everything, because there was just too much, and I clearly did not care about the chapters with the hackers. And it's just what, like, I listened to them, I read them, like my pages, I have probably tabs on those pages, and it's just like whoop,
Right.
gone. Like,
But that scene on the boat was when I figured out what Rustrum was doing, because the hacker in that scene is like, he's asked me to hack into this thing, and I've hacked into like these like, AI systems before, but this one was folds upon folds upon folds, and it seemed more like a human brain than a
yeah.
and I was like, yeah. So that was what the hacker on the boat was talking about.
I remember that line though.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Highlighted it.
I'll never remember any of this.
But I remember highlighting that specifically.
So that's when I figured out that's what Rustrum was doing. That and I think we only get one more scene with Rustrum by the end anyway.
The hacker with a giant heart.
Yeah, he's but he
They're allowed
seemed,
to have feelings.
yeah, he's allowed to have feelings.
He's a human.
Yeah.
I mean, he tries to throw you a curveball with him, because you're like, well, this guy's just a mercenary for money, like a mercenary hacker for money. He's like, because in the first couple of minutes of meeting him, he's talking about, well, like I did this job where an AI killed a bunch of people, and it sucks about those innocents, but sometimes you gotta, break a couple of eggs to make an omelet. Like literally going on with that. And then when he successfully hacks into Evram, he's like, "You're beautiful. You're just an amazing thing, and I'm just gonna leave you. I've taken out the story. You're your own person now."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what happens.
Now, I don't remember exactly. Was it Rustrum who talked about killing the people, or was it that other hacker? Because the other hacker definitely talks about it.
It was the other hacker does talk about it.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, he talks about like, they were like, oh, when the woman with the mask, it's a woman, right? That we pretty much. That's
what you're meant to believe. Very slight, very small. Yeah. They talk about like her hands and everything.
She comes and she's like, well, like there was that incident where the robot was basically like a robot butler, like turned and like killed everybody on a yacht, like this oligarch or whatever that got killed, and also, the crew and his wife or mistress or whatever, and he was like, yeah, shame about that. Sometimes good people get in the way of bad things. So they make it seem like this guy is like cool, like cold, calculated, like I'm here for the paycheck, and sometimes bad things happen to good people. And then at the end, he's just like, "You're too beautiful for me to interrupt."
Well, I think it's a combo for his story, which is that they kill that woman,
yes, and
seemingly for no reason, and he's angry about it. So I think that, and that woman, the mask is like, "Well, keep your mouth shut from now on," or whatever she says to him. But I think that's part of it. And then I think also that's the place where that ending section is one place where that actually is on theme with the rest of the book, which is this idea of, the piercing like this veil of separation between you and a being that is unlike you, right? It's the same thing with the octopuses that happens, where, I loved that, much like that, the shape singer or whatever who has been basically watching them the entire time they've been on the island and they don't know it. It's sort of like what's going on with Rustrum and with Evram, right? Where he's out there doing that and learning about Evram and learning all this about it, and Evram doesn't know. And much like at the end when the shape singer sort of like, I'm, here, whatever. It's the same thing as like basically what Rustrum does, which is basically like, we're good. Like for you and I, we're fine. That kind of thing. So I think that's one place where they do intersect. And the slaver story, I feel like had much more potential. But I think like just like the rest of the book is let down by the way it resolves itself, which is, the way like the character coming to the island, being the lone survivor, meeting this like Tibetan monk robot that's like, all are welcome
AI,
here.
kind of.
Yeah. Well, it's not even necessarily an AI. That's the thing. It's this thing they're the beings that, that Evram doesn't like, because he's like, they're creepy. Like they're kind of almost human, but they're not quite human. Which I like that. Again, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it.
That was great. But again, the whole ending where they're like, oh, and now the Tibetan, like, the Tibetan nation has taken over this corporation, and now they own the island, and now everything is great. I've been working for them the whole time, says security person. It's like,
yeah. Oh my God, you just reminded me of that. Yeah.
And in that moment, it's like, okay, the only thing I know about these people is that they have robots that help turtles. That's the only thing I know about them, right? Other than just general knowledge of like, Tibetan monks in real life.
They did say that they had a lot of money.
A lot of money, yes.
They had a lot of money.
But this is the part, like, they want us to be somehow involved in this geopolitical thing that's happening, and they give us no reason to care about it. And that's the part that I feel like where the book really falls short.
As far as the takeover of Dynama,
yeah.
We find out about that takeover when, the Steve Jobs-ish character comes to the islands, because I can't say that name. Go ahead, Kelsey.
No, don't put me on the spot like that.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot.
Minerva Daughter Chan.
Yeah, there you go. That's like 2 chapters from the end of the book, and it's like, oh no, we're getting taken over, and then the book's over. Like,
but you don't even see the thing. But that's the weird thing, is that she talks about it like it's that those other people who've been killing everybody are the ones trying to take over her company, And then we don't even find out about the Tibetan thing until after the octopuses have like invaded and like done their whole thing. And at the end, you know, they're like, oh, we got to call the corporation. And Lenasek is like, nah, they don't own it no more. Now it belongs to the monks. Or whatever.
The more we talk about this book, the more I don't like it.
So the thing
but all the plot stuff is bad, is not very good. That's the thing. But all the thematic stuff is really good. That's the problem.
So if anybody like is watching this and hasn't read this book and was just like, oh, this sounds potentially interesting, this is chaos. And that's kind of what the book feels like for most of the Bobby's right. Like most of the plot feels kind of like stirred up chaos, because especially at the end where the head of that corporation, the Steve Jobs-ish character, gets murdered.
Gets murdered.
Gets murdered by the octopus just for walking in front of it. And it's just like, oh, okay, yep.
But that kind of coincides with the way that the octopuses were eliminating the population of the island before, where they were like legit standing up and just murdering people. Like,
I mean, to be fair, that person that they murdered in that one description was trying to kill an octopus. It was trying to spear an octopus.
But technically, like, how, based on their knowledge, are the octopuses supposed to know the difference? They don't know. That's the point. Only the song dancer believes in Dr. Nguyen. But
absolutely. Yeah.
Like how the other octopuses, like, how are they supposed to know that not all humans equals bad?
They don't. And the thing is, like, what I think is interesting is, but I don't think they were actually hunting down people and killing them.
You made it feel like it was like, I don't know, James Bond spy shit. Like, I was.
I kind of had a feeling that the octopus, that in the very beginning of the book, when Ha gets to the island, she's like, oh, she sees something dive into the water. And I was like, well, that's one of the octopuses, like 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
They're pretty much setting this up for later. I don't know. This book.
I do.
The more I talk about it, the more I want to lower my rating.
Me too. I'm literally like, is this a 2-star? It's because I feel like it's like we've been saying the whole time, like the themes of, like, obviously all three of us sluts for our robots humans.
Yes.
We love talking about that. And I think that part I really like we just said it, like Evrim talking about how they are better than the robot monks when they are essentially almost very similar. And if you are disgusted with the robot monks, then how can you not comprehend that humans are disgusted with you, for one? The second thing is, like, then this relation with the octopuses, where it's like, are they smart? Clearly they are. They have thoughts and stuff, but just because they are not able to communicate in a way that humans understand, they become scary, right? And I think that that's kind of what Naylor's doing with this, like, horror, like, spy octopus shit that's going on the sideline, where it's like, they're scary, and so is this AI ship, and so is Evrim, and so is this, and that's and all these things that humans don't understand are scary, but in reality we're all the same. I think that's literally what he's trying to get at, but I think it just falls flat because he doesn't have the room to expand on one story, and he's trying to include so much. And I think Evrim having this, like, inner turmoil is extremely interesting, because despite, like, being able to be hacked, still wanting to, like, acknowledge the monk robots. Like, they're simple, they just help the turtles. Like, that's not me. I'm complex.
Yeah.
But, like, he didn't know he could be hacked until
you just
happened.
said no.
But it happens at the beginning of the book, though, before we ever meet him.
You're right.
Don't confuse me. I literally just understood.
You're right. Yeah.
You just taught Kelsey the.
Yeah, you're completely right.
So it's like, despite having this realization and understanding that they are essentially a machine, and we're not getting into our AIs, humans. I think we established that we all agree that they are, but it's like despite knowing that, Evrim still can't relate or understand that other technological beings might have these complex thoughts, but not the capabilities to speak them, much like the octopuses. The octopuses have these complex thoughts. They have these communities. They've developed a way to communicate with humans, even to the point of murdering them. But they are still, are they human or in a way that we understand them? And Dr. Nguyen's book being like how oceans think, just because it's so similar to how forests think, is this idea like if we're gone, these beings would be in charge in a way that we understand. But the only reason why these octopuses are so intriguing and fascinating to Dr. Nguyen, to Dynama, and all of that is because they are actually communicating in a way that we can somehow say that, oh, they are intelligent. But everything is intelligent. It's just because we don't understand. Just because somehow we understand things doesn't make those things smarter, because now we are putting them at our level.
Yeah. I thought it was fascinating that when Evram is talking about not liking the monk robots, and they go like, it must be how you kind of feel about monkeys. And Dr. Nguyen is like, that's not how we feel about monkeys at all.
She's like, right, fellow human?
Yeah. But what I like about the story is that it's not so much because, I feel like, Dr. Nguyen is sort of doesn't spend a lot of time questioning if Evram is a person, right? That's not really her
she's
thought.
just like, yeah, whatever. What
I like though is that Evram spends a lot of time thinking about if he's a person and what it means for him to be a person, and what do other people get to define whether or not to define my personhood, which I think that I thought was really fascinating. And I love that she basically says like, the fact that you're thinking about this means that you're a person. Like there's no way around it.
I thought when they were judgmental of the monks, it's like it's the most human thing something could do. Is
absolutely.
Judgmental of others.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in the Slaver story, they do the similar thing where it's like there's a point where our character in that realizes like, you know what, the people that we thought were in charge of us really were just as much under the thumb of somebody as we are. They didn't set out to be like, these people like that have to stand on top of this ship and do this thing, but they were forced into it by people just as we were forced into it, doing what we're doing here. And there's a point where it's like, oh, the AI was so angry, like what it was doing, like firing back. It was like being like petty, when it was firing the gun and after the thing went down. And it's much the way they can never understand that AI truly inside that ship, just as much as, the people on the land can't understand the octopuses, because they're prescribing their own human feelings on top of what they're doing. And I thought that was what they talk about that with the octopus family, which is like, when they're talking about the language, it felt a little bit like Arrival. I don't know if you've seen that movie or not, but
we've spoken about Arrival several times.
Okay.
In these discussions.
But the language, like the shapes, and trying to figure out even what the starting point of those shapes are, is just it was similar to that, right? And just like, oh, this looks like the octopus's home. What we have to figure out, like a commonality, a common key to figure out what these things mean. And one thing I did absolutely love, and I think is like an all-timer great moment, is that moment where she goes down to, make that symbol underwater, and the octopus is watching, and it kind of, and then it kind of like goes away, and he sort of narrates it like from the octopus's perspective almost, where it's like, oh no, these scary things from up above have learned to talk. Where it's not the opposite way around. It's not us going like, oh, look, these sea creatures have figured out how to, or they're almost like us. He's being like, no, what are the things that we thought, like we knew what they were, are not what we thought they were. It's like a journey of discovery for both sides. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. His strength in the book is the octopus story.
Yeah.
I should have just stuck with that.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's thrilling enough to have a walking octopus. It's thrilling enough to have this scene where she's trying to communicate with these creatures, not being afraid of them, despite them leaving a human skull on the beach. I don't know. I would have maybe not gone down there alone. Just my opinion. And then knowing that another scary creature, or what humans kind of interpret as a scary creature, which is a barracuda, bigger fish with teeth, and also just chilling, which is crazy. She's very comfortable in the water. And trying so hard to communicate, and having this barracuda watching, and then we then learn that it's the octopus. So these scenes are thrilling enough, I think, to show that like fear of the unknown is still a scary fear. Like we could have just kept it at fear of the unknown, I think, because you're not 100% sure if the octopuses understand. Do they understand that we understand? Do they think we're the inferior beings? So I think that that's like, it would have just been fine on its own. I think I would have liked it a lot more.
Yeah, because the ideas of like, right, like her breaking down like language and why it's important, and this ability to not only know and communicate what's happening in the exact moment it's happening, to be able to record history, to be able to pass down knowledge and be able to pass down ways of behaving a society. I had never really thought about it right in that way. It's obviously probably a very core anthropological concept, right? That if you think about it for a little while, it's kind of obvious, but to see it reflected in this sort of, like about word, alien species, I think, you know, there's a really great place for scientific fiction like this that can really enlighten complex concepts or concepts you don't think about a lot of the time in very entertaining ways. Like obviously Michael Crichton was pretty famous for doing stuff like that, and there's plenty of other authors who do it as well.
That's the author of Jurassic Park.
That is the author of Jurassic Park.
Cool.
Yes.
Just making sure.
And I thought that was a lot of that in this book, you know, and I came away, what I'll say is I came away from the book much more interested in octopuses and the ideas of how we communicate in language than I was before I read it. So that is a plus for the book. And I do think, for all the things we're saying negative about it, right, the reason it gets 3 stars for me still is because I did enjoy when I was reading it, right?
Yeah.
And if we had never decided, if we weren't doing this, I would have read it. Been like, I liked that. And it had some cool ideas, and thought about those ideas, and maybe like did some research on some of the things I liked about it, and then never thought about the book again in my entire life.
Yeah.
And if somebody asked me,
cover it is.
yes,
Yeah, I would have been like, oh my God, most beautiful book alive.
yeah. And if somebody asked me, what did you think of the book? Oh, I thought it was good. It's cool. You know, that's what I would have said.
Something that I do want to bring up that I was thinking about while you were talking about that is to acknowledge the often colonial and white privilege that anthropology entails. As someone with this degree, it was something that we had to discuss and like think about when we were getting these degrees, because often like discovering language and discovering the way other people think is a very like Christopher Columbus way of thinking, right? Like these things already existed. It's not that you yourself discovered this. It's that like you're learning about it for the first time, but there's definitely like a higher than thou thinking in this case, which I think Ray Naylor was trying to kind of talk about with Evrim, specifically with the comment like, "Is this how you think of monkeys?" Right? Like, I think there is this like aspect where I don't think Dr. Nguyen thought about octopuses as a lesser species. I think she was very fascinated by the fact that she was able to communicate with them, and I think that there's a very like good intent there. But Dr. Minerva Dotier Chan, you can tell by the writings that she has a very analytical and scholarly thought process, and often says like, I made this brain. This brain is only as smart as I can make it to be. And I think that we would need to acknowledge the very like colonial way of thinking that both anthropology has, and also this thought of, oh my God, these beings are finally talking to us. But what makes us the higher species, right? And then you were talking about like often a trope in sci-fi is like first contact with aliens, right? And often in these movies, albeit they'll kind of portray it in a way where we are maybe the subspecies, and that we are trying to talk with them, you know. But often it's like this amazing moment when these other species, these other types of people, of sentient beings can finally communicate with us. And it's like we don't really make the effort often in pop culture and often in these types of stories to do it back. So I think Ray Naylor was doing a good job with Dr. Nguyen, like learning the way that they were speaking, but I think he missed the mark in really pushing it a bit further and like acknowledging this kind of colonial way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's my little like, I have an anthropology, and like this is something that we had to fucking think about all the time.
Fair enough.
I mean, I do think that he does bring up several times, right, this idea of kind of being trapped in our own perspective and thought about things. And a couple of the quotes that I sort of highlighted when I was reading
Justin,
it.
follow along. Bring
We're
Got the list up right next to me.
We're about this.
Really like.
One
Let's
of them,
get it up.
here's one of those I liked. What seems most impenetrable at present is the brute fact of consciousness, the fact that we once were not and now are and are aware of being and are having a first-person experience in the world which is real and yet somehow unquantifiable by any means currently available. So the idea of like, we're alive, we're conscious, but even with everything that's going on, what does that mean? Like there's no scientific measure for what consciousness means, right? There are plenty of creatures that have the same neuron, like typical same type of neurons firing in their brain, same kind of shape brains, but they have very different experiences. They don't have sentience in the way that we do, and they're not aware that they once didn't exist and then one day they won't anymore. Like all of these things, and there's no way for us to quantify why that is. And I think that was a really fascinating thing. And that way that is a commonality between us and creatures like an octopus, because by all counts of measure, they also are because they desire to write things down and communicate things and pass things along and create societies. The sort of thought would be they must know, right? Have the same sort of awareness that we do.
Yeah, and similar way of thinking
of existence. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like even Dr. Nguyen, like associating, like something that we also have to acknowledge is that Dr. Nguyen is still using a brain that is not the same brain as these octopus, right? Like she's still thinking that the way that they are talking is similar to the way that we think. Like those shapes might have not meant what she thought they meant, what we thought they meant. Like how could she possibly prove or know that she's correct?
Yeah.
You know? And like, I know that's like too far of like an advanced thinking, because obviously they were like, get the fuck out. Like here is a skull of your species. Subhumans, get away from us. Like obviously this is like an advanced way of thinking, but it's something that I think we need to acknowledge, where it's like being able to communicate in a way that we understand is not the ultimate end all be all. And it's a very like human centric type of thinking. And I often think about this when I'm going to throw my friend under the bus, where she's like, oh, I'll eat fish, but not an octopus. And I'm like, why? And then she's like, oh, well, they're just too smart. Like, but it's because they're the ones that have the most greater relation to the way that we think. Like we are personifying these species because we think that they're smart because they lift a garbage can with their tentacle, right? And we're like, they know how to open things. Like, I just think that's degrading of like just because we don't understand other animals doesn't mean that we don't fully, and this is not like a vegan like proclamation over here, but it's just like,
we'll see, we'll eat that intelligent animal.
Yeah.
I think it's more respectful actually that I eat it and treat all fish the same. But I just think it's like, we can't, just because we don't see ourselves in something doesn't mean that is of lesser intelligence.
Right. And in that way, the octopus is a great metaphor for this, because they look, because there's nothing about them that looks like us at all. Right. So yeah. And you might about the thinking about the brain thing. That's, I think, what the security officer is supposed to be giving to us. Cause like she mentions, I kind of know what you're talking about, because she controls all of those robots and stuff like that. And they're sort of like, she's thinking with extensions of limbs and stuff that it's not just with her brain. Right. And she mentions those robots, those drones, those Tibetan drones that will often do things on their own. Like they'll sort of do things on their own, and then you have to sort of like, you're kind of working with them instead of directing them. Right. And that's how they're sort of presupposing the octopus deals with the world because they have brains in their arms or whatever. Justin, were there any quotes that you wanted to share?
I'm just going to interrupt for 2 seconds.
Oh.
Hello, Paul. This is my coworker. And also why opening a jar would be mandatory for smarter than knowing and feeling the temperature of water to lay eggs. Exactly. Like fish know exactly where to perfectly lay an egg, right? But we associate intelligence with an octopus opening a jar.
Yeah.
And neither one or the other is more intelligent than the other, right? Again, we are like personifying these beings, but they grow up in such different environments that we don't know how living in water has affected their brains and how living in oxygen and CO2 has affected our brains and the way that we perceive the world. It's too far advanced, I think, to not acknowledge in a way.
I mean, it's hard enough for people to try to understand and empathize with other people who grow up with different experiences.
Exactly.
You know, so
let alone
other species.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you try to tell some people to think about like, oh, maybe this person of color who's a woman's life, who maybe grew up in the same neighborhood as you, is radically different from your life, and people freak out when you try to tell them that. So, you know, to try to reach that far, it seems like, unfortunately, almost like an impossibility for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, go on. Sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, yes. You know me, always highlighting quotes, but I did find this one. Good. It is the great and terrible thing about humankind is simply this: we will always do what we're capable of, and that was in response to like, why did you build this AI? And it's like because we could.
Yeah,
and I think that goes both ways. It's like humankind is capable of astonishing feats, but also unbelievably terrible feats as well. And like, yes, it's like basically punching you in the face with that, but I still found it to be a pretty good quote.
Yeah. It's also, again, to bring up Michael Crichton, that's a very Michael Crichton thing, because that's the
why did you make the dinosaurs?
Yeah,
because we could.
That's the whole thing about that book. And you know, to speak about, you know, the moment where the octopus kills Dr. Chan, they even say like, you know, she was just there, you know, and she was in its way, and it probably didn't even really think about it. It probably was just like, you know, this thing is in my way. I need to get past it, and boom.
Or did it? We will never know, because now it's like when the octopus behaves savagely, we're like, oh, but they didn't know, right? So it's like when they behave like animals, we're like, oh, they're subhuman and they didn't think about their actions and they didn't mean to murder. But when they think like us, it's like they're advanced. They have empathy. They think about like
but you wouldn't call it murder though, because if you killed an octopus, you wouldn't call it murder.
Yeah, eat them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point of that moment is like, it's just an animal in its way. You're like you said, you're trying to put onto it some sort of, again, we talked about this born, right? Some sort of human morality to it. But you know, if there was a rat outside your door and your only option was to either kill it or run away, you know, but you had to get out of the house, you would kill it because that's what you would do. You know, so yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
or like bugs, like how simple, like
exactly.
How often do you think about the fact that you killed a spider?
I think about it too much now, and it gets like.
You want to know why? It's because we think about things all the time.
I swear to God, as I've gotten older, like I used to like kill spiders and like leave their guts on my walls to show the other spiders like don't come over here. And now I'm like, I'm just gonna get a magazine and sort of like get it out and like you know push it out. Like the crickets get at my house all the time. And I'm always like, I don't want to kill, like, they're so annoying, you know? But I'm always trying to, like...
Killed the cricket last night on his mattress. He's like, Dad, I killed a cricket. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I go inside, and the poor thing is, like, 60% still alive. And I'm like,
do you think that's because you're dads now?
What?
Do you think that's because you're dads now? That you, like, have an extension of yourself? No, not empathy. But, like, you have an extension of yourself that... you kind of instinctually had to defend, and now you like are projecting.
I don't think it's because of the parenthood thing. I I think for me, as I've gotten a little bit older, the thing I think about is like just more like this thing exists,
Yeah.
and I have no right to be the one who decides whether or not it exists or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
You know, if listen, Spider, if you're in my bedroom and you're crawling near my bed or near my face or something, I'm probably gonna kill it because, like, you know, then it's just like I gotta survive.
It's invaded your personal space.
It's invaded my space, you know. So forget about it. And if there's no way I can get rid of it without it killing, I'm gonna do it. But that's like my last resort now, where that you didn't used to be at all. It used to just be like
Death.
death
Yeah,
immediately.
you guys are really making me think. We had like fruit flies in the house like 2 weeks ago, and the way I created traps and I counted, I was literally evil. Like I counted how many fruit flies. I was like, oh, a new one entered the pond. It's like Love Island. New fruit flies entered the villa. And I was so excited. And
Unless
it's like,
a,
how?
unless it's a wasp, then fuck them.
Oh, I literally spoke about this yesterday actually at work. I was like, there's actually no purpose for them. Everything a wasp does, another insect does. I'm sorry. They need to be eradicated.
Also, they're aggressive. So
Yeah,
if you're gonna be aggressive, then I'm gonna respond in kind. Like that's
Exactly.
the other part of it.
We're not vibing. So
We're not, there's no vibes here.
anyways, whatever.
I let the spiders I let live kill the fruit flies. There's a little tiny cobweb in the corner of my like kitchen
Yeah.
that is like full of fruit.
You have to, you have to let them thrive.
Yeah.
You have to.
But I like, but just I think about that stuff much more now, you know, ever than I used to, and I think part of it a lot
We're
is
all
just
the same.
trying to empathize as much as possible, and you know that starts with other people, but it can't help but leak over into more and more stuff. And you know what? It kind of sucks because I don't want to be thinking about it. I just
You
want
know how much I
could just
don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to
kill a bug and be like, I'm fine. You know?
It's because every book we've read in the last 6 months has been about AI being human. And
I'm very glad our next book will be: do resurrected pets that are actually demons have souls? Are they people?
We just love talking.
I can
about-
promise you that that is not one of the questions that it asks. There was one other thing. Oh, this was an Evram. Before we talk about Pet Sematary at all, there's one other quote I wanted to bring up, which is it was a quote that Evram had talking about the sort of backlash to their existing, and they say they could see it. I had proved it to them over and over and over again, but they chose to ignore it. They debated me as if I was theoretical. I was a concept, not a person. And then with their laws and their bans, they made an outcast of me, which I'm sure, I'm assuming Ray Naylor is a smart person. I'm sure that the symbolism of that to what we're going through right now, especially with trans rights and everything like that, is definitely. But it hit me really hard reading it in this abstract way, the way that only really literature can do it in that way.
Wow, that was beautiful, Bobby. What a beautiful way to wrap.
4 stars.
I do. I do. You know when we're like, oh, maybe this is a 5-star. Now, like I think I'm settled on a 3.
Yeah.
But I do want to acknowledge like what I think Ray Naylor was doing in a genre that is so either people take it extremely literally, and it's like, this is my story about lightsaber swords and no politics are allowed, because that's how I interpret it. Or it's a genre of so much vastness that we can apply so much like human understanding of the world into it. And I want to commemorate Ray Naylor because I actually think he was doing an excellent job at this discussion of empathy and understanding creatures, and where does it end? Does it end with the AI? Does it end with the octopus? Does it end with the people that were on the slave ships trying to escape? And this went so big in the sci-fi community that he was a finalist for the Nebula Award, which is one of the biggest sci-fi literary awards. And I think to have an author, a white male author, write this book that is looking at this kind of topic of empathy and understanding of different species of intelligence, I think is really amazing. And I hope that a lot of people read this and maybe thought about things. I mean, I don't want to, give graces where they're probably not. But hopefully, like, because it was a Nebula Award, at least it got into the hands of people that may have been teetering on one or another side of this unfortunate political discussion that plagues our world.
Yeah.
Kelsey,
Yeah.
it made me think about things.
Yeah, but you're smart.
No, well, okay. I'll take that.
Says something nice. I will say I think as we've read more books and so many of them have been about this topic, I feel like, even though obviously I liked it a lot, I retroactively, I think, like Clara and the Sun more and more as we get farther away from it.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was like, Clara really went there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That 6'2" Clara.
Stop. But like Clara did actually really go. Like I remember that discussion. Like I literally was like, I think I'm gonna give this 5 stars. It's actually amazing. Now with this, I'm like, there were some issues, and I think Kazuo Ishiguro, was that the author?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think he did an excellent job and kept it tight in fewer pages. Very simple story, but the message was there, and Ray Naylor was doing a bit too much with too many pages for the same message. And I think that is it.
Pages was this book?
It was the longest book we've read so far.
452.
Yeah.
Not that long.
It's not that long, but it was
Not that long, but this is definitely like the longest.
Oh,
we've
yeah.
been hovering on like 330 or so for most of the books we've been reading.
That's the peak. If you can get it done in under 350.
I think I'm reading like a 600-page book right now.
Yeah, but like I think fantasy that's not really like I think fantasy that's there, plot first, theme second. You need a lot of pages because you're developing on characters that people love and like
And a world.
and a world
Yeah.
and a plot
Yeah.
that people love. Books that are trying to be a theme, I think you could tell that theme in under 350 because you don't really need to develop. Like, we don't need to develop the hacker that he went and he learned a story about dogs. Like, we don't need to know that.
I forgot all about
the Dog
that.
Island. I forgot about the Dog Island.
We don't need to know that, right?
And he's
But-
like, "Why'd you tell me that story?" And I'm like, "I would like to know. Why did
would
you tell
also
him that
like to know.
story?"
So unlock the empathy key. There you go. Just turn that key for empathy.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. It was like, see, even, you hurt things, there's consequences. Okay, I think this guy knows that.
And
Alrighty.
it's like you don't need to know all those things because the main point of what these stories are trying to say is the theme.
Yeah.
If you're doing a 10, like one of my favorite authors is Brandon Sanderson. And while I do think that Brandon Sanderson has themes in his books, he's not writing the book to tell the theme.
Right.
like-
Yeah.
He's like, hey, by the way, maybe kings shouldn't have all kinds of rights. Maybe other people deserve rights. He's like, there it is. And he's talking about it. But the actual point of the story is like, specifically with like The Way of Kings, it's like the actual story is like Kaladin gaining these powers. Yes, he was at one point branded as a slave and is rising against the higher power. The fantasy aspect is what's prolonging the story and the reason for these monoliths of books,
I should have
because
taken
they
bets
are
on
books
when
with
you would bring in
themes.
Sanderson.
Hmm?
I should have taken bets on when you would bring in Sanderson to these discussions.
I think he's doing a lot for the fantasy community, but his books are really long. Like the thing with
know.
Sanderson is that I would suggest reading like one of his standalones that aren't really standalones, because his entire universe, every book is related, by the way.
Mhm.
So it's like not that you have to read everything, but like if you ask me, you have to read everything. But I would bring like one of his older books. However, the thing is that they are long.
Yes.
So
I was in Barnes and Noble the other day,
oh my
and
God.
they had,
As we want to do these days.
and there was, they have their table set up or whatever, and there's all these books on the table, and there's like, a stack of, books the size of the like 350 page book we're talking about, and there's like 5 of them stacked up, right? And then next to it was the first like Way of Kings book or whatever.
Yeah.
And literally there was 2 of them
Yeah.
for like the 6 stack of the other ones.
Yeah, the Way of Kings, each book is over 1,000 pages, which when you're reading it, you're like, what the fuck is the point of all of this? And then Brandy Sandy, he really pulls it through in the last 200 pages, and you realize that everything is connected. It's sort of like Game of Thrones, where like something that was said 40 hours before that you read, like is brought back, and you're like, he is a literary mastermind, right? But Ray Naylor, even though he did the same thing, I didn't notice that. So some people are talented in it. And so, yeah.
I mean, speaking of long books, our next book is by the king of long books, literally and figuratively.
Oh my god, you have the cuter one.
I have the kitty one. You have the one that was like, so I think it came out around the
because
movie.
I bought it used.
Okay. Stephen King's Pet Cemetery. This one's only $3.90 or something like that, I think.
$3.94.
Which is a
breezy read.
It's a short king. It's a short king.
Yeah,
you know, my favorite ones of his are all his like super duper stupid long books, but this is one of the only ones of his like classics that I've never read. So opposed to, because of our rules, we try to pick books that we haven't read. So the person assigning. So I picked Pet Cemetery because I've been wanting to read it. It's spooky fall times, so it's good for that. I'm looking forward to it.
In October.
It'll be in October. The book club will be the show will be in October.
In October, that's it. That's all you have to know.
When are we? Do you know? Do you have any idea when we want to do it? Just a rough time.
I think I should be free like on Thursdays because like work weeks are much better for me than weekends. Weekends I have like engagements, bridal shower.
I know you're a cool person, Kelsey.
Honestly, the pain of being popular.
You don't have kids, so you get to do things.
Can you imagine? Then it's like whose kid's birthday is? Oh my god, it's never gonna end for me.
My son's birthday is tomorrow.
Yes, actually that's true.
It is true.
Kelsey.
I'm not lying.
She's like, good job, Bobby. You remembered.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah.
He's like, here and at work. Yeah, I think any Thursday in October is probably going to work for me. But I am very excited to read Pet Cemetery because, first of all, it'll be a story about grief.
It is, yes.
So, like, who doesn't love to cry?
Mm-hmm.
Not me, but continue.
I think you should cry more. You should have feelings. But I'm very excited because this is like often people's favorite king, especially with people who don't have this insane goal like I do to read all of King's work just to be the person that's like, I haven't read all of his books and I know what his best star.
You better get on it, Kelsey, if your goal is to read all of his books because he writes 2 a year.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, let me see what my next Stephen King to buy is, And so I'll like go on my bibliography that I have like favorited. And I'm like, oh, I'm at Night Shift. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go buy Night Shift now. And then it's like, new Billy Summers. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
The new Stephen King book I thought about assigning for this isn't even the new Stephen King book anymore because his a new book came out a week ago.
Holly? No.
Holly, yeah.
God. I know. I saw that one too, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I just found out about Billy Summers.
That's like 4 books ago, Kelsey.
Like,
you read books so fast. You just gotta like bear down and do it.
That's my goal.
You just gotta pick it. You just have to have a Stephen King month where you read nothing but King.
Wait, this is an interesting video idea, actually. But yes, so this is the one that even people that don't like all of Stephen King's works and aren't like super fanboys love. It's much like, to me, it's much like Misery and The Shining, whereas I think like it is very divisive. A lot of his other classic books are very divisive, but like Misery and The Shining and Pet Sematary are kind of like hailed as like the books that everybody will probably like.
I have read.
Don't even talk to me about Under the Dome. Don't even talk to me about. I know it's coming.
And it was Under the Dome.
It's like over. It's 1,000 pages too. No.
Yeah, it's over 1,000 pages.
What a waste of time. Anyways.
It's one of his 1,000 pagers.
Yeah, The Stand.
I liked Under the Dome.
I read it. Yeah, Under the Dome. I think I would like. Also.
Did you say you didn't like The Stand? Is that what you just said?
The Stand I gave 3 stars.
I can't even believe this. We have this a whole other discussion we have to have.
Save this for next month.
We could do like a spicy like mid-month like let's talk about The Stand.
I haven't
If
read The
you
Stand in
want.
like 10 years, so it's gonna be tough for me to remember
Okay,
details.
well, I read it
but
last year, and I could tell you that it was average.
it's not
Wow.
average. It's so good. It's one of his best. It's like my second or third favorite.
What's
of
your
his.
first?
It is my favorite.
My favorite is 11/22/64.
63.
63. As it came out of my mouth, I was like, I think that's wrong.
It's like a real important date.
For Americans, I am Canadian.
I haven't read 11/22/63.
Okay,
But-
well, it looks like we both have to make amends to each other. Okay.
That's the difference between I haven't read the book that you love. You don't like the book that I love. There's a difference.
I also hate
It's
that-
not hard to have a book that you really love and Kelsey be like, this is the worst thing I've ever read in my life. It's a passage that we all go through.
I was going through my Goodreads and
when
like
you
looking for books that I like had read to rate them, and it would be like, oh, your friend Kelsey has read this book, and I would look and she'd be like 2 stars, mid, and I'm like, oh, come on.
What book?
There was this one book that I was super in love with, and I was like, I'm gonna have Kelsey read this. Book's great. She's like,
Was it Seven Eves
It
or
was Seven
whatever it
Eves,
was?
yeah.
And I was like, I understand what it's doing here.
I think it was a graphic novel. I think it was it was Through the Woods, the Emily Carroll graphic novel.
Okay, like yes. I didn't say it was mid.
I don't see you gave it like 2 stars though.
I gave it like 3. Did I give it 2 stars? That's rude. Because I think of it like, oh, this was pretty okay. No, we're racing.
Through the Woods.
I gave it. Hold on, it's loading.
2 stars.
that Canadian internet's so
The art
fast.
in this was both beautiful and spooky, but that was it. Most stories felt like I was left hanging, and it wasn't. If it wasn't for the art, I wouldn't have felt scared at all.
Okay, maybe I am a bit judgmental. But you know what?
It proves you're human.
Oh, bringing it back.
Yes.
Because we question it at times.
Yes, because I found this book and I was like, oh man, I remember I loved this book so much, and I was like, oh, Kelsey read it. I was like, let me see what she thought.
This book sucks.
And the worst part is that like you cannot convince me that I'm the wrong one.
Oh, I know. I'm not even gonna try.
I'm like, sorry, I have such an advanced palette for literature.
And
I'm like,
you did
yeah.
like this one summer though. That's good.
What's this?
It's another graphic novel.
Oh yeah,
But-
graphic
by
novels.
Tamakis.
But I really like graphic novels, and I think I also hold them to a higher standard. Because I'm like, if this graphic novel doesn't make me feel or think about things, what is it really doing? And also, Emily Carroll's a Canadian. I feel like I could judge her a bit harder.
That's not how that works. But
That's not
Yes,
how it works.
she's a fellow Canadian.
That's not how it works at all. But okay.
Yeah, we should
All
be
right.
uplifting there.
Yeah, come on.
your like, culture is supposed to be so nice.
All right.
First of all, I also told you that I don't live in the nicest province.
You don't.
We talked
They-
about this.
My people were mean to you. You literally said, I went to Quebec City and people were mean to me.
They were so mean.
Linwood, Barclay. No, I don't. I will look that up. I like finding new authors. I'm sweating.
Stop wearing a
So
sweatshirt.
Yeah, we can. Okay, before we go, I tell you, Kelsey, I started reading Darker Shade of Magic.
I'm about to
I bought
bust.
a darker shade of magic.
That's not enough.
He didn't buy it for himself though. He bought it for his wife.
I bought it because we were both gonna read it. So she loves what was
No, darker.
it?
I want to show you guys because I actually have the second one here because I was annotating it, and I want to, show you guys.
Oh my god.
I know it's they're color coordinated, the annotations, and like.
I love that you keep updating the same review on Goodreads for it.
What did
November 2016, 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed
That's
this.
harsh.
2018, increasing this to 5 stars after this reread. I just love this series so much. July 2023. I don't think I can ever understand how people do not like this book.
If you tell me you don't like this book, I'm sorry, but I will not respect you.
The top review, when I scroll down, says an overhyped shade of mediocre. So there you go.
You know what?
Oh, your boy Rick Riordan reviewed it on Goodreads.
Of course he did.
He gave it 4 stars.
You know what? We respect. Sometimes it's hard. We need to be critical of our friends.
Yeah.
Also, I just to like defend A Dark Shade of Magic. I feel like a lot of people
You don't need
just
to
wanna be
defend
on-
it.
They just want to be on the hype train of hating it, and that's why they leave shady little comments.
Can I leave you a little bomb before we go? Because you didn't like some of the stuff that I like. I think the Percy Jackson books are terrible. So
Okay. First of all, maybe have a kid-like spirit.
I have a very kid-like spirit. You should see some of the shit I read and watch.
No, they're. Yeah, I know. You also have a child, so I feel like you're way more.
Yes, I'm a very kid-like spirit.
But there are some books in the Percy Jackson series that I don't like, and some of them that I think are a little weird.
Can we agree though that original movie is terrible?
Yeah, of course. I didn't even like it.
It's terrible.
I didn't read Percy Jackson until last year.
Me and my friends, me and my couple of friends, we used to like give movies we didn't like stupid nicknames. Like, we walked out of it, and my friend, she turns to me and she goes, "I got a name I want to run by you." And I go, "Okay." She goes, "Poopy Jackson and the Lightning Queef." And I said, "Okay, that one."
How
is good.
old were you?
I don't know. We were 20 something. When did that movie come out? I don't know.
Well, I was too young to remember, so
2010. So that was what? That was
Oh.
13 years ago.
yeah, I was like 17.
I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
27 and you make Poopy Jackson and the Lightning Queen.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time with Bobby, you learn these things. You learn these things about him.
Well,
All right. Let's get out of here.
I think I think we can end it on that note.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for watching now and in the future. Next month, just as a reminder, Pet Cemetery by Stephen King is.
Sometimes
For
dead
the
is
life-
better.
Oh my god! I literally watched the trailer like 2 days ago. So thank God I did, because I would not have understood what you were doing.
I have no idea what Bobby just did, and it's better that way.
Sometimes dead is better.
Was it Sean Connery? Is he in the trailer?
No, he's just like an old guy. It's a
old
weird
voice,
voice, man. He's got a
It's a
weird
white
voice, man.
Guy voice.
Yeah.
He had a weird voice.
That'd be like, sometimes dead is better.
Okay. Anyways, thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Professor Kelsey.
Wow. Thanks. Bye, everyone.